Get ready for Universal Epic Universe, featuring Super Nintendo World and How to Train Your Dragon Isle of Berk. Opens May 22nd at Universal Orlando Resort. Tickets and packages on sale now at universalorlando.com.
time has come. All right, what's going on? Let's see where we at on this thing. 12 people. That's all right. We'll do quality over quantity. Let me get my stuff in order. And we'll be good to go. Oh, where'd that chat window go? Here it is. Inflation is greater or less than expected inflation. Like who benefited, who is hurt? Yes, absolutely no problem. All right, yeah, so start getting questions up into the chat, please. That way we can start getting going on this thing. All right, I got to pour my coffee here. Today we're going with Grizzly Claw from the Kick-Ass Coffee Company. That's its actual name, Kick-Ass Coffee. As you can tell, I'm a bit of a coffee snob when it comes to buying it in my own home. So I'll drink the cheap garbage at work, but not the good stuff. Highly recommend you learn how to use a French press. This is the best way to do coffee. There we go. Alright, look at that sucker. Boom. Love it. Yep, I'm going to drink that whole thing tonight. And I will sleep the sleep of the just. Okay. So, I got one question loaded up from Katie. That's easy enough. Again, go ahead and get any other questions up you may have. And we'll get rolling. Now, the way I want to get rolling would be... Oh, I realize I don't have Blue Book access on this thing. That's a bit of a problem. If someone could open up the Blue Book and screenshot the 3-part 2 questions and send them my way on Google Classroom, I'd be very grateful to you. Grateful enough to maybe buy you breakfast tomorrow. Maybe. So, Ample versus Limited, absolutely. It definitely requires a talk. Alright, so while we're waiting on that content, let me pull up a something to write on. And I'll start writing things out. Nominal versus real, absolutely. Okay. All right, let's go. Okay. Let me know if the car noise outside is too loud. It sometimes picks up pretty loud in the microphone, even though I don't really hear it that much. Okay, so... first order of business was to take a look at inflation is great. Okay, so who is helped and who is hurt by expected versus unexpected inflation? I'll stick this over here, I guess. All right. So when you have inflation as a general idea, let me get a better font going here. Let me up the thing. There we go. All right. So what is inflation? And how does it compare to anticipated, or sometimes called expected inflation? Okay, so first off, there's actually 3 definitions here. There's inflation. Okay. Inflation just means a rise in price level. That's all it means. So if you remember, price level is this idea that we have a number of goods in the economy that we analyze their prices to see how they reflect overall the aggregation of all prices in the economy, right? Doesn't include every good, but includes goods that are very, very typical for most households to buy. So that would be how we arrive at a price level. So when you have inflation, it's simply the rise in a price level. When you have disinflation, that is rising price level but at a lower rate, right? So in other words, if you had a rate of inflation, this is just an example, in year 1 of 5%, but in year 2, it's 3%, that's disinflation. In other words, In other words, you can't have a that's not deflation because you still have inflation. You're just having a slower inflation. So inflation is a rising price level. Disinflation is rising price levels, but to a smaller degree than previous terms. And then the last term is going to be deflation. Now, deflation is a reduction in price level, right? So an actual decline of prices, not just a smaller growth or slower growth of price, but actual decline in prices. So that's a deflationary period. So these are the three sort of definitions. Now, as sort of expressed in Katie's question, there's this idea of anticipated or expected inflation versus unanticipated inflation. So let's do that. So what is anticipated, or sometimes called expected inflation? If inflation went from 5 to 0%, would that still be disinflation? No, because 0% is no. That'd be a what the hell would 0% be? Let's find out. I have no idea. What do we call 0% inflation? No answer given. Deflation is when inflation is below 0. Man, Abby, why am I letting you troll me? I'm letting you troll me. They're not going to do that to you. Don't worry about it. Nice job, though. You totally pulled me off there. Okay. So. Inflation. Sorry, where the hell was I? So, anticipated or expected inflation is a predicted rise in the price level, a predicted rate of inflation. Again, this is life. Everyone of you knows this. You're going to pay more for college than your folks, more for houses than your folks, more for cars than your folks. You're going to need more money to retire than your folks, etc., etc., etc. That's just, you know it. You realize it, you accept it, right? Like, it's just the way it goes. That's just it. You expect all your prices to go up. So that's anticipated inflation. Is this bad, right? Because this is sort of the question. Is this bad? And the answer is no. It's not bad. It's normal. It's normal. It's unavoidable. And the expectation is that as an individual, you take some responsibility of yourself to make sure that like your wages outpace this and so on. Now, it may or may not work out that way for you, but that's kind of the sort of hot take of it. Yeah, absolutely. We could definitely do that stuff, Nori. So that's the normal stuff. This is what that is. Now, there's the unanticipated inflation. I guess you could see it called unexpected inflation. I don't know how often I see that. I do see unanticipated quite a bit. Now, this one's just bad. Now, it's bad for the economy. There are winners and losers, but it's bad for the economy. Thanks, Lynn. That's helpful. Oh, I'm looking in the wrong class period. I'm like, where the hell is it? Alright, that's fine. Yeah. Just the photo's fine. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Okay, thank you. That never happened, by the way. We delete all evidence. So, leave it for now, though. So anyway, the unanticipated inflation piece, right? This is bad for the economy because this means that all the plans you made don't mean anything. It's like you plan to, if I'm a parent and I got kids and they're going to go to college, I can't be like, all right, it cost me 30 grand. I need to save 30 grand. Now, that's ignorant. You got to save more than that. But how much more? Well, if you're being reasonable, you might say, I don't know, let me add 3, 4, 5% to it. Okay, anything more than that is a higher price hike than you intended to cover. And that means you are in a bad situation. The whole economy is in a bad situation. Unanticipated inflation is bad. No one can, yeah, sure, Caitlin. They will, yeah, no problem. That's an easy one. I'll show you that. There's nobody who can really handle that. If you're very rich, you can, of course, but even those people make plans. You take loans, you start doing things, you buy things, you set up a business, and all of a sudden prices are jumping out of control. Everybody suffers. There's really no winner in that situation. But on the specific case of who does unanticipated inflation help or hurt, there are winners and losers. It helps if there's more price hikes than anticipated. It helps borrowers. as long as the borrowers are on a fixed rate loan. Okay? So if I borrow money at 5% and inflation is going through the goddamn roof, I'm winning. Not because I really gain more from this. I don't gain more from this. I'm in the same situation. Like if I borrowed $350,000 to buy a house and I bought my house, I don't suddenly get more house because inflation went through the damn roof. The reason I win, it's kind of like a moral victory, kind of, is I'm paying the bank back dollars that don't buy the same thing it bought me because prices have gone up because I'm on a fixed rate loan, right? A mortgage is typically a fixed rate loan. So that's really the win. It's really not about the wins. It's about who loses. Because the losers do legitimately lose, right? They really do. Because, all right, I still have my house. If I'm paying back X amount of dollars, you know, it's not like it's a good thing that my dollars buy less because all the other dollars in my life buy less too. So it's like, it's a weird take to be like it helps people. But that's how they put it. Now, it definitely harms some people. And it harms lenders if they lent on a fixed rate. And that's a real loss because I'll give you an example. I'll use the same example. Now you're the bank. And they said, well, we think we can make money on a mortgage where we charge 6%. Okay. So they charge a 6% mortgage to somebody. They make the loan. They take the loan. They pay for the house. And the money's now, you know, oh, there's a debt. Well, if inflation starts to spiral out of control, they're going to be getting back money over the next 30 years that cannot buy that same equivalent property 30 years from now because prices have gone out of control. Like, in other words, they're putting on profit on top of the borrowing. If the inflation's higher than that profit rate they intended to gain, they don't actually make any real profit. They actually lose money. They're losing real value on the loan. They would have been better off lighting the money on fire. Like, literally would have been better off lighting the money on fire than giving it to me. Because if there is an actual higher amount of inflation, when I pay them back these dollars don't buy as much as it did when they lent me the money. This is, again, the simple example is, I ask you for $1, I go to the cafeteria, I buy a bottle of water, I give you back the $1. The next day you go to buy a bottle of water, and the price got hiked to $1.25. I don't really win, because I still just drank water, but we call that a win. You definitely lose, because the $1 you lent me, which was really not $1, right? You lent me the necessary purchasing power to buy a bottle of water. I paid you back what was at the time the nominal equivalent to that purchasing power. If we learn the next day that the nominal equivalent of that is not the same as the real equivalent of that, and therefore your dollar doesn't buy what it used to, then you definitely lose. You're actually going to be a poorer human being. Your dollars buy less things. So that's the idea of helped and hurt on that situation. Wages. Okay, you're probably talking about this idea. There is this idea of real value is equal to nominal value, minus rate of inflation. Now this in particular talks about, all this thing here talks about is percentages, okay? This is percentages. If you do get stuff that's, Jesus Christ, I'm tired, I'm sorry, I had a long afternoon. These are percentages. So these percentages are not just like, it's not just any old numbers work this way, but when you're given real values that are in percentages, this will be true. So, example. If, we'll use the exact example I just gave. Okay, so we're solving for real. We're solving for a real value, right? So if the bank lent me money and they charging me 6% nominal interest, yes, we can. In fact, you just reminded me. I want to post up that screenshot of that review sheet. Thank you. I'm really not on my game right now. Feel free to yell at me. All right, hold on. I got to get it out here. Here we go. Send this to Google Drive. AP macro, upload. All right, bet. All right, let me get that on Google Classroom, and then I'll let you guys have that, and then we'll go from there. Kudos to Katie Schaefer on that. That was very helpful. And then I'm also going to call out Mariah for helping us out with that as well. Because she gave me something else I think will be helpful to you guys. Okay. This. Okay, so this is Katie's cheat sheet here. And this, I think, is pretty good. So we're going to go through this later, and it does scan out pretty well. So let me post this up on Google Classroom for everybody involved here. Oh, wow, I just showed it to you on the screen that you can't see it. I'm sorry. Let me do that again. I forgot that I can see that screen, but you can't see that screen. There you go. That's for you. So I'm going to put that right now into the Google Classroom. And that way you guys will have it, and then we'll carry on what we're talking about here. So again, your mileage may vary. Not necessarily everything she has on there is for everybody, and nor do I expect everybody to be able to remember everything that's on there. But if you ask me, was a good job done? Yeah, good job was done. That was what I was looking for, right? And then I will also do the same with Amariah's notes from today in class, because a lot of kids were apparently at that stat thing today, and I think they all missed something helpful and useful. So a lot of kids were telling me what I went over today was very, very helpful. So I asked, if one of them didn't mind to just kind of share their notes, and hers would look pretty good. So we went with that. Okay, this is the cheat sheet. So this is now posted to classes. Bingo bongo. There you go. And then let me grab the other thing. There we go. Okay. And download this sucker. Add to drive. Come on. Google Corp refused to connect. Of course you did. Fine. I'll do it the hard way. No problem. Sorry for the delay. This is stuff I should have done before, but I literally just walked in when I said I walked in. Alright. We're going to screen cap this. That's what we'll do. We'll get it out there that way. What the hell? Alright, there we go. Alright. Okay, and save. Let's put it policy notes. Okay. All right. Now that will put that one up on the Google Classroom, and we will be back to action here. Sorry for the brief delay. All right. This one's not going to be through Google. I'm going to just strictly upload this. Upload. Desktop. Okay. And period 2 and period 5. Here. Get this. Alright, sorry, we're back. Apologies about all that. Alright, we are back. We are back. We are back. Okay. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Get rid of this. Okay. Awesome. Get rid of this. Okay. Yeah, we can do anything you want. Just keep posting them up. Everything's possible. I'm just going to go until I pass out, basically. So, back to what I was saying. So, if you want to use an example of real equals nominal minus rate of inflation, I said we could use the example from my actual situation from before. So, if the bank made me a loan of 6%, that's the nominal value of the interest rate. But inflation ended up being 10%, just to make the numbers nice and easy. 6 minus 10% means that real value actually ends up being negative 4%. They lost value here. So that's how you figure out that kind of stuff. So if you see those kinds of numbers tossed out at you, that's how you figure it out. All right. Ample versus limited reserves. Okay, so actually I'm going to reference that cheat sheet right now. This is a good moment for that. So let's go ahead and pull that sucker up. Now is a good moment for that info. Okay. So, ample versus limited reserves. Let me explain the basics, okay? First off, limited reserves is the standard operating procedure for monetary policy that is used throughout the world. In America, because our nation, our government, our central bank, so fundamentally borked their response to the 2007-2008 financial crisis, they created a monster that actually warped out of its control and basically became immune to government intervention. this was the decision. This culminated in the decision of letting banks have unlimited funds from the government under the expectation that they would turn around and lend them out, so it's no big deal and it'll help the economy. And the banks simply did not choose to do that. They hoarded the money, and they hoarded it to such a degree that they just kept hanging on to it, and they actually ended up never, they never ever had needed to have to, or decided they didn't want to lend it out. They were just happy to sit on a big cushion of money. And that never really changed. And rather than the government sort of reversing course, the government doubled and tripled and quadrupled down on this policy and created the nightmare that is the excess reserves or the ample reserves situation. So ample reserves is when the economy is so flush with money sitting in banks that banks are no longer responsive to these small tweaks of open market operations. They just don't care anymore. Now, an ample situation is demonstrated by the reserves market. Sorry, mouse in the wrong place. The reserves market right here. Can I annotate this? I can. Let's go. Oh, don't even stall me. Either turn on or get out of my way. Oh, God. We are zoomed in, boy. Holy moly. Where's the zoom on this thing? Can I just control? Good. All right. Cool. All right, so your limited reserves is defined by the money market. Where's my highlighter? Is this a highlighter? That ain't a highlighter. Markup. Freehand highlighter. Yellow. Okay, this sucker here, the money market. That is your limited reserves framework graph. The reserves market is the excess reserves framework graph. So let me talk you through this. So before the government screwed this up, aka before 2007, this worked just fine because it was based on assuming, now watch carefully, look at the shape of this graph. It was based on assuming the economy was always on this situation here. See this? That was the assumption. This curve is that money demand curve. That's basically what it's supposed to represent. So if you're here, then everything's fine. Because if I take the money supply, which is in this case meant to represent the same thing as the supply of reserves, and I shift it left or right, I will get interest rate changes, right? I will get different levels of interest rate if we're across this line. But the reason we're not across that line anymore is because the government's pumped so much money into the economy that there simply is no reason for banks to ever respond to this. Why would a bank care about a meager like $50 million when they're sitting on $700-800 billion? They don't care. So they're not going to do it. They don't give a crap. So since they don't care anymore, they're immune to the policy. So this works and used to work before that time. And it worked fairly well. It was pretty good at motivating banks to do particular things. Whereas the ample reserve situation, highlighted by this graph, no longer does that because the only demand that now motivates banks is this one. The demand for reserves, meaning are banks interested in keeping their money in reserve accounts with the Fed and getting free interest rates from this? Because the Fed basically had to concede that they no longer had any control here. So what they had to do was basically create an incentive, a bribe to stop banks from actually now flooding the economy with that money. And so the bribe became, we will give you interest rates on these gigantic sums of money we gave you for free, which is the real kind of, the knock-on ridiculousness of the whole thing, but I won't get into it right now. So the U.S. government, through its Treasury Department and the central bank, was paying banks now, and still are paying banks now, an interest rate on from taxpayer money for banks, private banks, to have their money sitting with the government doing nothing. This is our current system. It's called the ample reserve system. It is 100% a reaction to the screw up, the terrible miscalculation that was quantitative easing during the crisis in 2007 and 2008. So, how do they work? Well, the way limited works is actually a little more straightforward, actually. See, limited is more or less limited to the idea of open market operations. Like, you could do discount rate and all that. We talked about that today. That's on Amori's notes that I posted. But the reality is it's open market operations. And open market operations basically works like this, right? So if you're going to actually deal with open market operations, you got... Oh, Jesus, sorry. I'm catfishing myself here by using the wrong screens. Okay. Come on. Yeah, sure, fine there. Okay, so it goes like this. Oh God, that is tiny. I'm sorry. Okay. Open market operations. And it's really simple. If you buy bonds, MS goes right. If you sell bonds, MS goes left. That's it. That's the whole policy. So if they if they want to increase interest rates, they sell bonds. If they want to decrease interest rates, the central bank buys bonds. And that shifts MS left or right. Now, MD can certainly shift in this graph. It definitely does shift on a fairly regular basis, but we're talking about policy here. And so that's what the policy is. That's exactly how it functions. That's exactly how it works, and it's working as intended. So the basics are, if you decrease the money supply, you increase interest rates, you make it harder for people to get a hold of money, and more expensive to get a hold of money, they're less likely to borrow money. If you make interest rates lower, people are more likely to borrow money. It's really that simple. So that's how open market operation works. And it works in very small increments, so it's good for tweaking, and therefore you can kind of hit the nail on the head. Reserves market don't work like that. Reserves market, none of that crap matters to banks anymore. So what happens instead is the Federal Reserve will simply raise or lower the policy rate. So it's just this rate here. They'll raise or lower that rate right there. And in doing that, what that gives them is the incentive to banks to say, well, if we raise the rate, then that certainly means that banks have an incentive not to lend money because the federal government is offering them free cash if they leave it there. If they lower the rate, the federal government's still offering free cash, but the free cash might be so low, it's not worth having. Think of it like class, right? If I said, look, man, no matter what, if you do nothing, I will. If I want you guys to do nothing, right? If I say, if you do nothing, I'll give you a 10 for the quarter. That's not really high enough to be worth doing nothing. If I say, okay, if you do nothing, I'll give you a 75 for the quarter. Do nothing. Just sit there. 75 for the quarter. There absolutely are some takers in my class for sure who would go, yep, I'll do nothing for a 75. Now, I'm not stopping anybody from going out there and trying to do better than a 75. You certainly can. But if I'm offering a 75 for doing nothing, I clearly am going to have a better incentive reaction to that than if I offered 10 or 15 or 50. And that's all this is. It's just offer an incentive that basically makes it more difficult for banks to continue to say no to lending to people. So the reserves market does shift, and I saw that last question. The reserves market does shift, and the way it shifts is like this. Where's my freehand drawing thing? Do I have a freehand drawing thing? Blue. Fine. To shift the reserve market, you're going to either raise or lower this policy rate, and that does have an impact on the other stuff. So if you raise the policy rate, it's like this. And then you would move that bottom line over. DR1. It's supposed to be an arrow. Sorry. And that's how you do that's how you do it. You move the bottom up, or if you were, and that's for an increase of the policy rate, which again is a contractionary policy. We discussed that today. And then down would be the expansionary policy, and you'd actually would continue this line downwards and do that DR1 over here, and that's your expansionary policy. And that's it. That's how you shift it. That's all there is to it. So does it shift? Yeah, it shifts all the time. That is something they do all the time. They have to. It's good stuff. Okay, let me go back to the top of these questions. So I think I covered that reasonably well. Can we go over nominal versus real GDP? Yes. But what do you mean? What parts of it? So what we got on here? Anything Katie got? All right, well, here's one right here. So nominal versus real GDP. Let's talk about what the differences are between nominal and real values to start with. Real values are deflated, meaning you took the dollar figure of price out of that GDP value. So in the United States, our nominal GDP is something like 30 trillion. Hold on. Nominal GDP US. $27.2 trillion, right? But this is not a real value. It's simply based on everything that we said it's based on. In other words, current prices. Where prices go up all the time. We just discussed that. And over, by the way, here, this is of course over time, right? So we're talking currently. Now, you'll see here, these are two numbers by the Federal Reserve, right? FRED is the Federal Reserve Education Department. So, They have the best data. I've shown you this stuff all year long. So they list our national GDP currently right now at what number? Oh, that's Q4. I don't want Q4. What am I going to... that's Q4. Oh, they have this listed as... No, hold on. How are they doing this? Millions of dollars. Okay, so this is... Oh, lordy. 7 million millions? Am I reading that right? Why must you do this, guys? 7 million millions. Okay, we'll do this one instead. Thank you. This is your... It's in billions. Okay, so this is 29,000 billions. 1,000 billion is a trillion. So we're talking a real... They say this is real or nominal. I clicked on real, but that... Oh, this is nominal. Okay, this is nominal. All right, this is what I want. So this is 29,000 billions, which means $29 trillion. That's the Q1 2025 number. So this is more accurate than that Google search was giving you. So that's your nominal GDP value. Your real GDP value, okay, let's see if we have it here somewhere. Real GDP right here is only 23. There it is. $23 trillion. So what that means is our nominal GDP being 29 trillion. Let's round everything, make it nice and easy. Our nominal GDP being 30 trillion and our real GDP being 23 trillion means that there is a $7 trillion increase in nothing but prices from the base year, which 2017 is the base year. Right here they're telling us that. Since 2017 to now, so whatever that is, 8 years, there has been a $7 trillion increase in prices. All right, meaning the price of GDP, just the price component, has gone up year on year on year. And if you total it all up, you add it all up, you sum it, it's gone up $7 trillion over that time. GDP over that time, real GDP, has gone up as well. Now, this real GDP has no prices in it at all. These are baseline prices. So, in other words, you've deflated the price, and this is just the real gains, real value, actual production of the economy, not simply a higher set of prices. So that's your nominal versus your real. That's what they mean. Now, there are things you might have to do with them mathematically, like here's how you figure out the GDP deflator. You need the nominal GDP, they should say GDP, nominal GDP over the deflator number. Either you have that or you're given that. And then you divide those, one by the other, and then you times 100, and that gives you a real GDP value. You could do that, all right? That's one way we use that information. There are others. There are some things that you might be asked to calculate a nominal versus a real GDP altogether. Like a nominal GDP would be something like, here's a price basket, go price by price by price and quantity and calculate it all out. We did that in class the other day. That's an example of how you might use something like that. All right, let me see what's going on here. If inflation, we did that. Yeah, Noria, can we practice? So this is what we just talked about, right? Can we practice calculating nominal GDP, GDP deflator, and all kinds of unemployment, please? Yeah, we can. How do you calculate nominal GDP? Well, it depends on what you want to do. So in other words here, GDP. There are two methods to calculate GDP. One is the income method or the income approach. Oh, meth rod. Yeah, I feel like that right now. And the spending or expenditure approach. There's also a value-added approach, but don't worry about that. Having said that, I do know for a fact they asked a multiple choice question, the value-added approach last year, so don't be surprised there's one this year. That just means every stage of production is added up independently. So you milk a cow, what does that cost? You take the cow milk and you process it and clean it and whatever that thing is they call whatever they do to clean milk. I forget what it's called. You pasteurize it. They pasteurize it. Okay, what did that cost? And you add it up, you put it in a carton, what does that cost? How much did the carton cost? What did that cost? How much did it cost to ship it? And you just add. That's value added. It's a very, very, very lengthy approach. Okay. And it's not really functional in a $30 trillion economy. Now, your income method can get you GDP. Your spending method can get you GDP. These are nominal GDPs. Okay? Nominal. Income method is wages plus rents plus dividends plus interest. These are all the categories of income in our country, all right, or in the world, really. Wages, rents, dividends, and interest. Wages meaning what you're paid at your work. Rents meaning what you're paid for gear, equipment, or property you rent to other people. Dividends is the profits you've earned on your investments, on your assets. And then interest is the percentage of your assets you have been paid in order to deny yourself access to your funds now. That's interest. So you put in a savings account, you're getting 2%. That 2% is the payout for you to deny yourself the access to that money now. That's what that is. Spending method, which is the one you're much more likely to come across and the one we use more often, is you add the types of spending. You have consumption, you have investment, which again, this is the money spent by firms. It's business spending. That's all it is. It's the same as consumption spending, just done by businesses, okay? Then we have government, and then we have net exports. Now, net exports is exports minus imports. So maybe it becomes more important later on with other stuff in the course. Exports minus imports, okay? So that is that. Now, 3. That's how you calculate them. It's really quite that simple. You just add them up. There's nothing else to it. Now, GDP deflator, again, I'll come back to the sheet we were looking at because it's accurate. Where'd it go? There. Okay. So this is how you calculate your GDP deflator. It's right down here. All right, you take your nominal GDP, you divide it by the GDP deflator, and you do it times 100. So let's just make up one. All right, let's just make up one. That's the way to handle it. So I'll get the old calculator out here. All right. Sorry, I'm dragging my screen around all over the place. Okay. So let's say you've got, I don't know, let's make up a number. $150 million nominal GDP, whatever you are. You're Rhode Island, all right? $150 million nominal GDP. Let's assume the GDP deflator for your year. So if this is 2025, the GDP deflator for the year of 2025 is 120. Times that by 100, that's your real. All right? Oh, whoops, I did something wrong. No, I did something right. That's right. So that's your real value, okay? That's your real, not real GDP. What did I do here? What happened there? Something went wrong. Oh, that's right. Now it's correct. So I lost track of the numbers. So it's $150 million with 120 deflator means that if you divide it and then times by 100, the real GDP in that year would have been only 125 million, not 150 million. So of the 150 million nominal, 125 is the actual value of production, and 25 million of that is just how much the prices have gone up since the base year. That's how you do that calculation. Very, very straightforward, really, once you do it. What else was the part of that question? Oh, kinds of unemployment. Do dividends count stocks? So, okay, dividends are not stock. Dividend is income earned from stock. So that is not the same. So let me just kind of show you quickly a very quick example. Dividend versus stock. I'm just looking for a chart that shows dividend payments. Dividends best funds. There you go. So this right here, I actually have a couple of these funds. So these funds right here pay dividends, okay? The dividend yield, this is annual, all right? Annual yield. Now, this is what they're going to pay of their year-on-year gains. So in other words, they'll pay out 4.78% of the gain in value of the company every single year. Depending upon the type of stock you have, if you have preferred stock, you get this all the time no matter what happens. But if you have common stock, you have the right to vote in shareholder meetings and things like that. So, but in any case, these are the dividends that you're paid out every year for having these stock portfolios. So buying the stock, the value of the stock, no, that is not counted in GDP. But the income you earn every year from these payouts, yes, that part is counted in GDP. So that's the difference between the two. So hopefully that clarifies a few things there. Unemployment, right? Okay, so unemployment. First off, the most critical type of unemployment we learned about is the natural rate. It comes up all the time. Remember, the natural rate of unemployment actually makes its own cameo in the Phillips curve. That's not the only place where you can sort of make interpretations about it, but it does show up directly in the Phillips curve. Okay, so what the hell is the natural rate? The natural rate is mathematically very simple. You take all the structural unemployment and all the frictional unemployment, and you add them together, that's your natural rate. The other way to get the natural rate, hold on, let me do this. The other way to get the natural rate of unemployment is to simply take total unemployment, this is all of it combined, minus the cyclical unemployment. And that will equal the, that will equal the natural rate. That's all you got to do. Okay? So, what are the types of unemployment? So there are three. There's technically four. So the course counts them as four, but there's really three. The first one is frictional unemployment. This is the idea that you and your business are having friction, meaning you, the employee, or as an employer potentially, and the employer are having a friction. That friction, for whatever reason, means that one party or both parties no longer wish to continue this arrangement. It's like a girlfriend-boyfriend breakup. It's that simple. You don't need both parties to agree. Anyone could terminate the relationship, right? You can't be like, yeah, I know you want to break up, but I say no, so haha, cooties, got you. Like, that's not how any of this works. So you don't need your boss's permission to quit. Your boss doesn't need your permission to fire them. If it's a frictional unemployment situation, then it's just somebody chooses to end the relationship. So that's frictional. It's unavoidable. It will happen, partly because a lot of frictional unemployment isn't bad. It's people activating and moving on to new and better opportunities, okay? So I'll give the example. I don't think she'd mind if I say it. So Miss Scully, if you have her, used to work at another school district. That school district laid off her job. Now, we'll explain the kind of unemployment that is in a minute. That's not frictional necessarily. In the process in which she moved to art school and took on the leave replacement for Miss Lavasco. So that is an example of someone being briefly unemployed, and their situation is not necessarily better or worse. Like I'll give you an easier example actually, because you guys are the example. The absolute moment you step up to that microphone next to me in graduation, and I go, Bobby Bitts, and you walk across that stage and shake hands, bam, sucker, you're unemployed because you're not a student no more. You're not a student no more. Now, you're only unemployed, though, if you're looking for a job. So maybe we should start that. Like, what the hell is unemployment, right? Like, that's not even so obvious. In fact, let's back this up, because now I just had an epiphany. Because there's things in this that you guys don't know. So first off, what is unemployment? So to do that, you need several numbers, right? You need several numbers. The first number you need is the labor force. The second number you need is the WAP, the working age population. The third thing you need is the either is the word, either the employed or unemployed number. Now these are numbers of people. Okay. Now I say either because that's usually how the questions are sort of laid out to you. They usually don't give you both. Okay, so let's start with this stuff. So first off, the working age population, right? This is going to be, this is going to be anybody basically of sound mind and body over from 16 to 60, give or take. It's something like that. Okay, it's not the exact numbers. Ages don't mean nothing to me. The labor force is going to be, let me do it this way. The labor force is going to be a number that simply add up your employed plus unemployed. Now remember, those are people. Those are not percentages. Those are people. That's how you get your labor force. So in other words, your working age population is everybody in society. Like no matter what you are, whether you're infirm, a prisoner, a student, it doesn't matter. You're in the working age population. Like if you're in that age range, you win. Now, here's the key. Unless you are looking for a job and you are not institutionalized, you are not unemployed. So you have to be looking for a job. So again, unemployment is two things. Number one, looking for work. All right, actively on the hunt. And two, not institutionalized. Meaning, you are not engaged in a permanent placement in some sort of a institutional setting. Remember what institutionalized means. This has three basic categories. Institutionalized people are those in prison, those who are in jail, or those who are at school, students. You guys are not considered part of the labor force. So when I said, okay, you cross that threshold, you shake hands, you're now graduate Bobby Bitts, are you unemployed? Well, that depends. Are you looking for a job? If you're looking for a job, you're unemployed. Now, let's say you're not looking for a job, and you're frictionally unemployed, by the way. That would be frictionally unemployed. Let's say you're not looking for a job. You're actually just going to go chill for the whole summer. You have no plans to get a job. You do not want a job. You are destined for mom's couch, and you can't wait to get there. Okay, that's fine. That means you're not unemployed, though. You're not part of the labor force. You're just a self-declared bum. You're not working. You're not trying to work. Now, you are part of the working age population. So one of the stats you can get asked about all this is a thing called the labor force participation rate. Work is work, Abby. Work is work. So that's a trick question. Now, there are a certain number of hours you have to work every week legally to be considered part-time. But part-time or full-time, you can have 4 jobs or 1. You're employed, right? So it's not like I count for 3. I have 4 different jobs I'm paid for. I'm up to 5 now. I guess 5. I have 5 different things I could say I get money for legally, like legal money, not like, legal money. So every one of them doesn't count as a job. I'm not 5 employment. I'm 1. Me. That's it. It doesn't matter how many hours I work. Again, there's a small minimum, but beyond that, doesn't matter. So yes, they do ask that question. Oh, here's Steve. Steve went from full-time to part-time. What happens to the unemployment rate? Absolutely jack nothing happens to the unemployment rate. Nothing. It stays exactly the same. My man's working. That's it. Doesn't matter if he's going for less hours. Doesn't matter if he's getting less pay. Doesn't matter if he'd rather be a ballerina, but he's just going to be a waiter. Like, that's got nothing to do with it. It's you're working. That's it. Now, the labor force participation rate is an important stat. It is your labor force divided by your working age population, and then probably could have done this a little bit better. Times the whole thing by 100. So I'll just do one for you, right? I'll do one for you. So let's just say, as an example here. Okay. All right, so let's just say you have, let's say for a minute, every single high school kid was part of the working age population. Let's just say that. And let's say we have a working age population of 900 people. I count up how many people are employed and how many people are unemployed. All right, I'm sorry, I don't need that for right now. Excuse me. I am going to need that actually because I need to figure out the labor force. So I count up everybody who's employed and unemployed. And let's say we have 1,000 kids in the building, and let's say I have 650 of them are employed or seeking a job. All right, that's the number. So I take my 650 labor force, the workers and the non-workers who are wanting to work. I divide that by the total population. I times that by 100, and that's the percentage of my population. Obviously, easy math could tell you that. You didn't necessarily need a calculator. But that is the percentage of my population that is engaged in the workforce. This is the labor force participation rate, 65%. Now, Is that high? Well, it could be higher, but it is what it is. So that's what you might be asked to know the working age population for, because they are going to test that kind of thing. So all students in prisons count as the working age population, but don't count as unemployed. Right. So yes, correct. So let's just make the number nice and easy. You got a 35-year-old male in prison, right? He's definitely in the labor force. Like whether it's 16 or 17, I forget what the minimum age is, but just, or take any college kid, same thing. Are they in the working age population? All right, so we'll get to that. Good question. Are they in the working age population? The answer is yes, they're in the working age population. Are they in the labor force? Well, the answer is it depends what they put on their W-2, but it should be no. All right? Like when you file your taxes, I mean, it's a little bit beyond the AP exam. When you file your taxes, you put on their occupation. If you put student, you do not count. If you don't put student, if you put whatever, TikTok star, well, now you're in. Because that's the only way they know you are a student, bottom line. Now, the truth is they don't really count like that anyway, right? Like, they do it in bulk. Like, they know these numbers aren't going to be accurate. They do things like, all right, what's the total number of American students age 16 enrolled in college? And there's a number for that, right? And they can just deduce the whole system based on these big numbers. And if they're off by a couple thousand, 100,000 people, whatever, like, it doesn't really matter anyway. It's like, it's all approximations. So, yeah, if the student has a job, it depends on what they tell the government they're doing for a living. Are you a student or are you a job holder? That's really up to you. Okay, so that's how you figure out the labor force participation rate. And then once you have that, you're able to figure out what percentage of your population is engaged in the economy. Now, back to these things. So, you have the natural rate of unemployment, which is made of structural and frictional unemployment. They add up to the natural rate. You have total unemployment, which can be determined by, or a natural rate can be determined by taking the total unemployment, which is every person in the economy who wants a job but doesn't have one, minus the cyclical, and that will also give you NRU. Now, there are indeed three types of unemployment. Type 1, frictional. Again, this is you and your boss have some sort of disagreement. Sorry, I hit the code bar here. Some sort of disagreement. It is a personal or professional or both, or it could be silly, it could be serious, it could be stupid. It could be the guy never stops flirting with me, all the way up to the guy's got a weird haircut, so I don't want to hang around him. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, the reason's irrelevant. Frictional is frictional. Somebody chose to end the relationship. Sorry. It's, he's just not that into you. That's just basically it. Now, structural. Structural is the most complicated one. Structural is defined as the wages demanded by the worker exceed the market rate. Now, that's a very complicated way of putting that. So how's a simpler way of putting that? It's simple. Your skills aren't worth what you want to be paid, so no one will hire you. Don't mind me. I got a helicopter over my place, and I definitely heard gunshots the other night, so I'm a little sketchy. All right, so, look, it's basically this. This is how the AP will treat it. You have a skill that is no longer worth any money. It's obsolete, or it just isn't particularly useful anymore, or the world has moved on, or whatever it is. Your skills aren't worth what you want to be paid, so no one will hire you. We're going to get to laid off in a second. It's not structural. So if they have Flippy, so Abby brings up the Flippy, right? This is the other example of structural, but the AP won't ever use this example. Well, no, they do. Actually, I'm sorry, I'm being stupid. This is the example they actually use the most. They won't call it Flippy, but the example they use the most for structural is worker is replaced by the robot. Now, why would a worker be replaced by a robot? Because they're cheaper, right? It's not that the robot's better. That's not necessarily the case. Like Flippy, is Flippy better at making burgers and fries? Probably not, but I'll give you a real example of a robot. If you go to Stop and Shop and you get Marty, right? That son of a... He's not better at his job than a human. He just isn't, right? The guy's all over the place, getting in people's way. If his job is to find a spill at the 1.5 miles per hour the bastard travels, there's no way he's finding a spill before somebody, busts their ass in the spill. So it's not better. He's not. But he is cheaper. And so you ask yourself, okay, how quickly do I need to find and identify spills? Right? Maybe the answer is not that quickly. Maybe it can sit there for an hour and that's fine. Okay. Well, if it can sit there for an hour and I don't mind waiting for Flippy to eventually find it, or sorry, Marty to eventually find it, then why not just hire Marty? Marty's never going to be late to work. Marty's never going to complain. Marty's never going to join a union. Marty's never going to, declare sexual abuse or assault from his boss. Marty's just a robot. And Flippy's the same thing, right? So Flippy is just, okay, can Flippy make French fries faster and better than a human? Maybe. Actually, it's pretty impressive to watch it work. And that is structural unemployment. It's not that you can't get hired as a fly flipper. You can. But you can't get hired at the wage rate you want to be paid. Therefore, no one's going to hire you. Now, it may not be the worker's fault. There are policies that lead to structural unemployment, most notably minimum wage. So why do I need Flippy? Because the government says I got to pay the fry flipper $20 an hour. I think Seattle's up to $20 an hour now. I think that's their minimum wage. Hold on. Seattle minimum wage. The minimum wage in Seattle is $20.76 per hour. Okay. Remember, that's your wage. That's not the full expense of the employee. The employee has to be insured. You need unemployment payments. You need workers' compensation. You need all that stuff. You need uniforms. You need training. That is not the totals. That is not the total expense of the worker. But let's just take that number for what it is. $20.76 in Seattle, Washington, in order to work, to hire somebody, minimum wage, right? So if I go to McDonald's, Seattle, prices, okay? A Big Mac meal, right? Just so you know I'm not trolling. A Big Mac meal, $15.49. The Big Mac alone is $8.89. 10-piece chicken nugget meal, $14, $15. So for you to eat, like, do they have a large fry? Here, medium French fries is $5. Now, why in the world are medium French fries $5? Because you're paying your workers $20 an hour to flip them. That is why. So eventually, the only answer to that for a business is to say, goodbye, I bring in Flippy. Now, it doesn't mean that Flippy is going to cause them to lower their prices. Absolutely not. If you're paying $5.75 for a medium fry right now, you're still going to be paying $5.75 when Flippy's done with you. Don't forget, don't assume they're going to drop their prices. But the idea is, well, what makes a company make that decision and go, yeah, let's go down the Flippy road? Well, the answer is because they're going to not want to pay those excess wages, right? It's the same in New York. Well, yeah, probably it is. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. You know, I mean, we talked about this. Minimum wage leads to structural unemployment. It is a fact. We talked about how union contracts lead to structural unemployment. Because remember, if I am a teacher, right, I have to be paid a certain wage at minimum, regardless of skills or outcomes, regardless of the rarity of my talent. I told you, a lot of people out there can teach social studies classes, a whole bunch of them. Very, 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 very few can teach physics. So in a free market, the physics teacher would be able to go to a school and go, listen, you got a bunch of egghead nerds in here that want to take a physics class. You don't have a lot of qualified people to teach a physics class. You want me? It's time to pay, sucker. And that's why most schools only have one certified physics person, because the number of students who want to take the class are very, very, very small, because it's a very difficult class. And then on top of that, it's very hard to find a teacher to fill the class. Like, it's not like we would really be able to push a large physics initiative in the school. Like, if we said, yo, every senior needs to be taking physics. Poor Mazzito. What's she going to do? 5 classes of physics? I don't know about that. That probably still wouldn't cover it. So I'm just saying, like, there's a reason for these things. And those are all structural employment. So not all structural employment is, you're an idiot, you want to be a ballerina, but you suck at dancing, so therefore you're unemployed. That is structural unemployment, but that is not the normal cause. The normal cause for the AP exam is the Flippy example. Robot replaces worker. That is the normal example. Now, the third thing is, Abby mentioned getting laid off. Getting laid off is slang that typically refers to cyclical unemployment. So I'll use again some examples close to home. This again normally is the slang of laid off. This is the only type of unemployment. This one's special. This one's special. It's special because it's not part of the natural rate. It's special because this can be changed by government policy, for good or ill. So when the government does stuff that changes unemployment, this is the only unemployment that's changing. 1 year, they put on a test, the government increases spending, what happens to price level and cyclical unemployment. They wrote cyclical in. And that threw kids off. They're like, I didn't know what to say, blah, blah, blah. It was the same answer. This is the only type of unemployment that responds to government policy like that. All the others don't. That's why they're part of the natural rate. So, cyclical unemployment is special for that reason. The other reason it's special is because you can have cyclical employment, right? So you can have, in those inflationary periods, where are these extra workers hired? What do we call that? That is cyclical employment. They're excess workers, but they are cyclical. They go with the business cycle. That's where the name cyclical comes from. So as you're heading into expansion, sure, you're going to get more workers. Eventually, you're going to hit that peak where you can't produce anything more, and you're going to start to have to get rid of workers. And then those workers will go, and the economy will go down, and you'll hit those contractions. You'll end up in the bad situation. Now you have a cyclical unemployment problem, not just, it wasn't just equal anymore. Now it's cyclical unemployment, and then you'll get out of that and come up, and Bob's your uncle. You'll repeat that until the day you die. So that's how this all works. I mean, flat out. So that's cyclical unemployment. So that's the one thing about it. It can be changed by government policy. It's the only one that is changed by government policy. It's the one the government's trying to mess with when they're trying to mess with unemployment. It's not part of the natural rate because it does in fact fluctuate, and you could also get it to zero. It could be negative. It could be positive. It could be zero. All right. Yes. What Katie wrote is straight facts. If you have cyclical unemployment of any number, you have a gap of any number. If it's zero, and only if it's zero, you are at the natural rate of unemployment. That is correct. You're at the long run potential GDP. Yes. Yes. So if I go back to the cheat sheet. I gotta just leave this thing open. Bueller, where is it? So if we go back to the cheat sheet, here we go. So the ADAS that we have drawn here, the one that's in full employment equilibrium, right here, this one, that is I guess she was putting a point out here to represent what it would look like with it. Ignore the pen. Ignore the pen. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Get rid of that. Girl, is you crazy? What are you doing there? Why didn't I catch that? Alright, get rid of that. Pretend that's not there. Pretend that's not there. Okay. What you see there now, that's a 0% cyclical unemployment. You want to see a 2% cyclical unemployment. Well, that's not fair. If you want to see let's not say 2%. Let's say you want to see a 10% cyclical unemployment. 10% cyclical unemployment would be like over here. Right? You'd have that recessionary gap. All right, it'd be like down here. Again, a 5% cyclical employment would be like over there somewhere. Employment. So that's what that is. All right, that's all that is. That is how that graph works, and that is how that concept works. Boom, 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 boom. We definitely can, Elliot. All right, let's go back up. Those are all the unemployment types. I'm not sure what unemployment formulas we would want. So calculating unemployment, I just did, right? I just did. The only real calculation I could think of would be natural rate, which would be the structural plus the frictional. If I'm missing something, do let me know. Can review accounts, bank team. Yeah. The way to do that though is to actually pull one up. So hang on. Hang on. Man, I am struggle busting tonight, boy. This coffee is keeping me just treading water at the moment. I could pass out this keyboard at any time. Alright, let's see. I remember talking crap about how easy it would be to find a question like this, and it took me a little bit. So let me check a little bit later in the... No, it's not there. So I'm looking for a very obvious balance sheet question. They do show up on part 2s pretty regularly. What was that? Nope. Nope. You know, they say yawning's contagious. Did you yawn after I yawned on the other side of your computer? How weird, right? Not there. Let's try this one. It's going to be last year's test, isn't it? I'll be searching all over God's green earth, and I'm going to find it on last year's test. I feel it. No, it was not. All right, let's try 2021. I guess we'll try that. I didn't expect this to be as hard to find one of these things. All right, I'm looking for specifically a T account question, so that's why it might be taking a little bit long. Come on, we gotta have one here. Let's go. It's not T accounts. I thought it was for a second. Okay, so someone asked for this. So while I continue the search, someone asked me to do a question that has something to do with this unemployment stuff. So we can quickly glance at this while I continue to hunt here. So calculate unemployment, or countries face trade-offs. So this is a production possibilities curve, okay? And they're asking you, okay, based on this data, which country has comparative versus absolute advantage? You figure that stuff out. Remember, it's 1 hour to produce a unit of consumer goods and 2 hours to produce a unit of capital goods. That is another way of saying input method data. Input method data. You calculate that, and then you get this data here. Total employed, frictional, structural, cyclical, and labor force. I guess this is what it meant by calculating unemployment. So, calculate the unemployment rate in country X. Again, we need the labor force to do that. So, the labor force, all right, let's just take the numbers and calc them up. Let me get this thing over here. There. Okay. So, your total number of employed, well, let's find the labor force first off. The labor force is going to be your employed and your unemployed added up. So your employed is 180,000. That part's easy. What's your total unemployed? Well, we have that number here. We got 10,000 of frictional. We have five. Ooh, geez, sorry, that was not supposed to do that. 10,000 of frictional, 5,000 of structural, another $5,000 of cyclical. Add that all together, you got 40,000. Add to that the 180. Sorry, the 180,000 I meant to do. 40,000 plus the 180,000 employed. That's your total number there. Did I add something twice? If I added something twice, I definitely did. It's not 40,000. I definitely added it twice. It's 20,000 unemployed. 10 plus 5 plus 5. Sorry, I must have hit the button twice. Plus the 180,000 total employed. That is your total labor force. 200,000 people. 200,000 people in the labor force. Now, to figure out the unemployment rate, you take the division of the number of unemployed people and divide it by this labor force number. So the number of unemployed people we just said was 10,000 frictional plus 5,000 structural plus 5,000 cyclical is 20,000. Divide that by your 200,000 person labor force. The labor force, that's that, times 100, 10% unemployment rate. That's how you show the work too. That's how you do it. Okay, that's all it is. Labor force participation rate in this country, you can see they want that. We just did that together before. So again, this is going to be working age population. So this is pretty simple actually. You have a 200,000 person labor force. We just figured that out. Add that 200,000 person labor force to the not in the labor force number of 100,000. That's a 300,000 total number of people. So once again, just do a division. 200,000 people in the labor force divided by the $300,000 working, 300,000 person working age population times that by 100, you got a 66.66 repeating percentage of labor force participation in that economy. Okay, so that's how you do a question like that. Now I am slightly stalling as I continue to search for that other question. I am really stunned that it's taken me this long to find it on a part 2. I am genuinely stunned. But if I don't find it on the next one or two I'm looking at, I'm just going to go to the question bank. There we go. First Superior Bank comes through. All right, so here is a T account question. All right, this was what we were asked to find, and we eventually came through. What's a fit check? What's a fit check? And a full coffee review? It's pretty good. I'll be honest, the Death Wish was better. This stuff is not my first choice. So this brand is okay. I like it, it's okay. But the flavor I like is called, so it's called Kicking Horse Coffee Company, I think it's called. And they have a dark roast called Kick Ass Coffee. And I like that one better because it's got some more cherry notes in it. I like cherry notes in my coffee. Death Wish is the best one. Death Wish dark roast is like my favorite one. That one's very good. Unless I'm feeling very Guinea. If I'm feeling very Guinea, then I just make espresso. But I didn't feel like doing that tonight. I still don't know what a fit check is. Is that like a wellness visit? I have no idea. So, the following is the balance sheet of First Superior Bank. Okay. And you got the following here. You got assets on the left, liabilities, and owner's equity on the right. I'll explain the equity thing and why it's zero in a minute. That's just to cover your ass, but it sometimes does have a number. Now, I will tell you right now, there's only two ways I can ask this question. They either tell you what the required reserve ratio is, or they have to take the reserve number here and split this up into excess and required. They have to do one or the other. If they don't split this number, then they can ask you to calculate what the required reserve dollar figure and the excess reserve dollar figure would be by telling you this rate. If they do split this up, then they'll simply ask you to find this rate. So we'll just do it right now. I'll show you. Okay. Okay. What is the dollar value of new loans that First Superior can make? Explain. The explain is simple. They can loan any excess reserves they have. That's it. That's the explanation. The number requires some numbers. So how much do they have in excess reserve? So again, this is not that super difficult, right? What the hell with this copter, man? Anyway. Alright, so we have a 10% required reserve ratio. 10% of what? 10% of those demand deposits. Okay, remember, there may be other numbers over here. There could be treasury bond value, capital goods value. It doesn't matter. You only take required reserve from deposits. So, we have a $2,000 deposit, right? And times 10%. 200 of that dollars has to go into required reserves. Now, hold on. This bank only has $200 in reserves. So what does that actually mean? Very simple. It means this bank cannot make any loans at all whatsoever. They have zero loans they can make because they are already loaned up. They have loaned every dollar they legally can. The $200 they have left in cash is their legal requirement to hold it. By the way, maybe this isn't obvious. Balance sheets are only ever done in limited reserves questions. Like this is a limited reserve situation automatically, this thing, okay? So that's the facts. They cannot make a single dollar in new loans. Why? They have no excess loan reserves to loan out. That's it. Mr. Smith deposits $100 of cash in demand deposit account in First Superior Bank. Calculate the maximum amount of new loans First Superior can now make. All right. So once again, same math. All right. So here's Smith. Smith comes along. He throws $100 in this bank. That $100 still is subject to the 10% required reserve ratio. 10% must be left with the bank. The bank can then loan the $100 minus the $10 required reserve number. The bank can now loan $90. That is the maximum amount of new loans First Superior Bank can make. That's it. Simple. Okay? As a result of this cash deposit, calculate the maximum change over time in each of the following: loans and demand deposits. Okay. So that initial loan was $90, right? So $90 times the the money multiplier. The money multiplier, I shouldn't jump the gun here. The money multiplier is 1 over the required reserve ratio, 1 over 0.10 in this case for 10. So 10 times the $90 initial loan, that's the total amount of loans that can be made in the banking system. That is the maximum, $900. Okay? What is the total amount of money that can be put into demand deposits? Well, it's the same number, $900, because it's still subject to required reserve. It's that simple. So both these numbers, same answer. As a result of Smith's $100 cash deposit, calculate the maximum change over time in the money supply. This is a trick question. So they want you to take the same number 10 and times that by the initial deposit, right? Because they put $100 in there. So they should make $1,000 in the economy. Wrong. No, it don't. Now here's why. It do not, because the $100 he puts in was a cash deposit. It was a cash deposit. They said he puts $100 of cash into his demand deposit. So what? Why would that stop it from counting? Because they asking you for the maximum change. $100 cash being put into the bank is not a change in money supply. Money is already M1. So any money that this guy's got in his pocket or otherwise already counts for the M1. So no, that part's not new. His $100, though it might be tragic how he loses it or something like that, does not mean that it no longer exists. It still exists. It just is in possession of whoever has it. So in this particular case, you would do 90, not the initial deposit. You take out the required reserve and times that by the money multiplier, and that would yield $900, which is the same answer as those others. Which is provide why reason why the actual change can be smaller than the maximum change you identify. All right, why might the actual change in money supply be smaller than this maximum? The answer is very simple. People sometimes save part of their money. They don't all spend it. So people just might save some more money than they necessarily would otherwise do. And that's the case, they just, or they could put it in a cookie jar, or they simply may not spend it, or they may not spend it in a timely manner, or whatever it is. Any of those examples will work as long as they're real and legitimate. Okay, as long as they're real and legitimate. All right, just did the money multiplier. A fit check is, you shot my outfit? What outfit? I'm in basketball shorts. This is my away jersey from my baseball team when I was 15, 16, 17 years old, Brooklyn Kings. Okay, right there. It still fits. Well, it stopped fitting for a few years, but now it fits again because I am so dapper and I have maximum aura. So yeah, that's it. That's my fit check. Yeah, that was that question. Can we do a review of currency? Would appreciate, depreciate. Yeah, there's some simple rules for that, Ellie. All right, I'm sorry, they're not simple, but there are rules. There's a list of rules you can follow, and they'll kind of do the job. So let me just pull up the Google Doc again, wherever the hell I hid that thing at this point. Where are you, Google Doc? Google Doc. Where are you, Google Doc? There we go. Okay, we're back. Okay. What causes currency to appreciate or depreciate? Your currency will appreciate if... This may not be an exhaustive list. I'll do my best. 1, demand for your currency goes up. 2, supply for your currency goes down. Now, in these cases, I mean in the Forex market, right? In the foreign exchange market. Now, moving aside from that, because those might be like a little bit duh, all right? So I can understand you being like, that's a little obvious, Malvagno. All right, so what else can do it? So, number 1, if there is a decrease in your price level, that will lead to increase in demand for your currency. Let me not do it that way. That will lead to demand increase. That's a shift to the right in the Forex market, the one I just said above. And that will appreciate the currency. Why is that? If my prices are cheaper, right? So I'm Malvagonia and I got whatever, Hobo Land over there. And Hobo Land would like to buy some of the great gear from Malvagonia. They want some drip, all right? So what happens? So they go and offer me money for it. Okay, great. But I don't charge them a different price. Like, forget tariffs for a minute. I don't charge them a different price. Like, I'm a retailer, right? I just sell shirts. I don't go, oh snap, it's a Hobo Lander. Yo, son, you gotta pay 25% more for your hobo-ness. Like, that's not a thing, right? That's not a thing. You don't. Amazon doesn't go and be like, although that's wrong. Amazon does do pricing depending on where you're from. That's pretty funny. But in general terms, the price is the price is the price. So if I find that the nation's prices have fallen in Malvagonia, but I'm from Hobo Land, I'm more interested in buying Malvagonian stuff because their prices are cheaper at the moment. So if America's price level declines, people will have a greater demand for our currency because they want to get our currency now so they can buy our cheaper discounted goods now. That is how that works, okay? So decrease in price level. The second thing that'll cause a appreciation of a currency, and then let me just do this to save myself a headache. The opposite of these things causes a depreciation in the currency. So if you increase your price level, demand will decrease. That depreciates the currency. Okay, so please keep in mind the opposite causes the depreciation. What else appreciates your currency? If you have a rise in your domestic interest rates, nominal or real don't matter. If you have a rise in your domestic interest rates, that will make foreigners want to get your currency so they can invest it, and that will appreciate the currency. I mean, those are the two biggies, honestly. Now, there's also a change in taste. There's no real accounting for this. Like, I don't know. If there is an increase in demand among Americans to go visit Paris, okay, for whatever reason, who knows the reason? You know, it doesn't matter. For whatever reason. Or I'll give an example. I'll give you an example. I saw this in class today. I still don't quite understand it. This. Okay? The Comfort hoodie. The Comfort hoodie. Now, I ask people, why do you want this hoodie? What is so special about this hoodie? These guys can't even spell their own company's name right, so what do you want this for? And I was told, oh, it's this, it's that, it's whatever, right? Yeah, my email address? Okay. zippity-doo-dah@yahoo.com. Thanks. So, now if you scroll down, we did this morning. I'm like, all right, whatever. It's just, random chick, random dude in, sweatpants and sweatshirts. What the hell makes this thing supposedly worth $76, right? What would be the logic for that? And then I see what makes it worth $76. They gave these people free stuff, and they gave these people free clothing to make it seem like they're big fans of the brand, right? So, of course, you got everybody, right? You got, like, the slightly silly blonde streamer girl in her couch. You got the guy who's supposed to be attractive, I guess. I don't know what his deal is. You got Man of Mystery over here who probably is dumping a body off into the ocean somewhere that he just murdered. And you got, I don't know what she's supposed to be. Girl next door, I have no idea what's going on there. But obviously these people are all influencers of some kind, right? So why are they doing this? They're doing this because they're meant to improve the brand recognition. There's even like a tariff sale up on this thing or something. So these are clearly not American product, right? So in other words, if you change people's tastes for some reason, our hoodies are not a substitute for professional medical advice. Yeah, okay. But anyway, like where are they made and so on? They're clearly made somewhere like that's not America because they're making that very clear in this thing. So just kind of back to my point. So there could be a change in taste. And if there's a change in taste that makes people want your product more, and your product's a foreign product, then you might see a movement like that. Yeah, you can have this Google Doc if it means anything to you. It's like scribble to me, but sure. So anyway, that's what it is. So that's what appreciates your currency. Now again, the opposite is true. Now, do you get change in taste questions on the AP exam? Oh yeah, hell yeah, you do. Maybe more than anything else. Sometimes it'll be like, French people want to vacation more in Berlin. Oh, that wouldn't work at all because they're both in euro. I don't know. French people want to vacation more in the United States. So increase in demand for the dollar. That's simple as that. There's nothing else to it. So do keep all that stuff in mind. What else? Forex? That's me being lazy. There. That's it. It's the same as here. It's on that cheat sheet. Jesus, God, I have a lot of windows open. Hold on a second. Whoa. Okay. Do this thing. Here it is right here. That's the foreign exchange market. It's sometimes, it's sometimes just called the Forex market. But that's a shorthand. Don't do that. This is the foreign exchange market right here. Okay, that's the one I'm talking about. So in this market, you see demand increases and so on. All right. What else we got on the table here? So Abby's asking, can I use supply and demand changes interchangeably on foreign exchange? Let me explain what she means by the question, because I don't think that's an obvious question to most people as to what she's even saying. So here's the foreign exchange market. This is the exact scenario I just gave you. So people are drawn to Comfort Clothing, even though they can't spell their own name. And they decide to, let's just say they're made in Vietnam. So people are drawn to these clothes. They want these clothes. Okay, great. So if this is the foreign exchange market for the U.S. dollar, okay, trading for Vietnam, and a question like that, you probably cannot shift. Well, for the U.S. dollar, you'd have to shift supply to the right. But you could also probably get away with shifting demand to the left because you're showing that effect, right? Now, with something like if you had the Vietnamese curve instead on that question, that's a little harder to do supply with, and I'll explain why. So there's no real reason why a Vietnamese would take their money out of the foreign exchange market just because foreigners like comfort clothes. See, if there is an actual, like, I'm trying to think of an example of this. So, okay, if there's an interest rate change, and instead of it being about, this stupid clothing brand, suppose instead America simply has higher interest rates than their competitor right now. That would convince Americans to not just not buy the foreign currency, but actually to withdraw their own from the foreign exchange market so they can invest it and get a hold of these high interest rates. That's the kind of thing you will tend to see, where you really can only answer the question one way, because there's no real way to sensibly do that with supply, kind of. Are you going to do the Blue Book FRQs? Yeah, I'm fading, so I should probably start on that, I guess. No, but I should cover capital and current accounts. Okay. Hang on. No. I'm looking for... No. I'm looking for a good visual. That's a good visual. Who did this? Let's do a... Oh, no. Oh, no. Mr. 5 o'clock permanent shadow. Oh, no. Okay. All right. This is a good visual. All right. Take this... Here, hold on. That didn't help at all. Jesus. Sorry. Screenshot that or something. Like, let me zoom in on it. This is a good visual for understanding the balance of payment accounts. All right. You really want this part over here. Don't worry too much about this over here. You want this. This is how this works. So you have this idea, the balance of payment accounts. Inside that are two other accounts. They are the current account and the capital account financial account. It's actually called the CFA. So they don't have it's right here. The balance of payment means the balance of current account, balance of capital account, balance of financial account, and a balancing item. Don't worry about the balancing item. That's when the Federal Reserve comes along. But imagine the capital account also has this financial account in it as well. So there's capital financial account, the CFA. And on the other side is the current account. The current account is where you get your balance of trade, which is these net exports. It's where you get people sending money to families in another country. And it's where you get the net, sorry, that was this one, sending money to people in other countries. And it's where you get your foreign income. So if you get paid by some sort of foreign agent, it counts here. Okay, that's current account. Financial or capital financial account is the recognition that for each of these transactions over here, for every Chinese hat I buy to sell at Walmart, I have a imported hat, but I need to have a matching exported outgoing flow. That flow is not going to be a good. The hat's the good. That's an import. The flow comes from the capital financial account, and that flow in this case is going to be very simple. I bring in the hat for $5. I hand them the $5. That's the flow. That's the interchange of commerce in this system. And that is how it works. So it's a little complicated, but that is basically the whole deal. So that's the big difference between the two. Now, I'm reading through your question. Basically, that's the whole point. So, if you have a transaction in the capital account, there has to be a matching transaction in the current account. And the match must always balance out to zero, right? So if I, just as an example, if I bring in those 10,000 shirts from China and they have a value of $1 million, the capital account is going to see an increase of $1 million as I pay the Chinese firm. And the current account is going to see a decrease valued at $1 million because I brought in all these Chinese shirts. That's going to be it. So it's a balancing act of those two things. All right, the blue book. Let's do it like this. I legit am going to need like a 5-minute break, I think. I got to go wash my face and try to wake up a little bit more. I am pretty cooked. Give me 5 minutes. Let me go wash my face. Let me go see if, I don't know, if I could shotgun this coffee or something. And then we'll come back and do those balance of payments. Let me just take a stretch and I'm sure I'll feel a little bit better, right? So 5 minutes. I'll be right back. Go ahead and get a drink, use the bathroom, and then we'll keep going again at 9:50. All right, I'm back. All right, let's do it. I am more alert, so that's a good thing. All right. They are on the classroom, yeah? All right, so let's get rid of this, get rid of this, get rid of this, get rid of this. Good, okay. All right, so the kids in period 5, everybody can access this, so it doesn't really matter. All right, cool. All right, so let's do this question here, and then we'll do the small ones. All right, how can I do this in a way that's going to be... I know. Screenshot. The screenshot. There it is. All right, let's go. Okay. Follow along if you need to on your end by opening it up on your end of things. Here we go. Assume that the country of zero land is in short-run equilibrium. The expected inflation rate is 4%. The actual rate of unemployment is 5%. I'll zoom in a little bit, I guess. Hold on. The natural rate is 6, and the equilibrium real interest rate is 3. Okay. All right, so draw EDAS, easy enough, and label everything and what kind of gap. So, okay, we have a natural rate of 6 and an actual of 5. 5 is less than 6. We do not have enough unemployment then, and that means we have an inflationary gap. All right, so the inflationary gap thing, I guess we're going down the Microsoft Paint route here. I guess that's what we're doing. All right, MS Paint it is. All right, so we're drawing that graph, right? Oh, I don't have any tools on this. Come on, man. There's got to be a way to do this. Zoom. Control plus page up. What kind of world are we in? All right. So we'll draw axes first. Oh, God. Why? Okay. There. Doing our best here. Okay. So we have AD, AS. We've got price level. You've got real GDP. We have the... That's no good. That is no good. We need to... Well, that's way too big. That'll do. Oh my... There. Alright, we need to do LRAS. AD. Now, it's a recessionary gap. So you have to, it's an inflationary gap. We had 5% natural rate, 5% actual employment, 6% natural rate. That is not enough unemployment. We have an inflationary gap. So you're going to draw your supply curve somewhere over there. This is SRAS. Okay, I'm going to regret that later. And that's your equilibrium. This is going to be, right here will be your YF. Right here will be your Y1. Yeah, you get it. And then right over here will be your PL1. And that's going to have dots. Don't forget the dots. And that's basically the idea. All right, so that's how you set the graph up. I mean, I don't have a better way of doing it at the moment. Can we look at a question where we have to graph foreign exchange markets? I forgot how you decide. Yeah, it just says whatever the thing you have to do is it's just draw a foreign exchange market for the US dollar, for the yen, for the Canadian dollar, for the Argentinian peso, for the South Korean won, for whatever the hell it is. They will tell you right there. That becomes the title of your graph. And then just do the template from there. So once, just read the question, take exactly what they order up for you, and put that as the title of the foreign exchange graph, and then you're fine. Then go from there. Yep, no worries. Okay, so that's our part one for that graph there. Okay, we've drawn the graph. Cool. We've gotten through A1 and A2 doing that. Now B, assume no policy action is taken to address the problem. Explain how the economy will adjust to full employment in the wrong one. All right, so it's going to adjust like this, right? You're not graphing this, but supply would shift to there. Like it'd be a leftward shift. Now, why would it do that? Well, that's where the explanation comes in, right? So the explanation goes like this. You have an inflationary gap, so this is going to be your explanation. When would that graph shift? Oh, if they told you to. Like, they could have told you to shift it, but they just didn't, right? Like, they could have told you shift the supply curve, but they just didn't, all right? If you mean the AD stuff, well, actually, now's not a bad time to do it. So, Amariah went and put the notes that I wrote up on the board yesterday, and she put them here. This is Amariah's notes from. What do you mean I can't preview the file? Get the hell out of here. Whatever, man. Sure. Hold, please. Okay. So, all right. There's a quick and easy way to flip it on this, and I'm not going to spend my time worrying about it. You guys can figure that out. But this thing here, it looks crappy because I zoomed in, but it's much better quality on the actual thing we uploaded. So this is from Amariah, and she just basically copied all the information I put today on the class about how you know which policy to use and when, and it's a flow chart for that logic. So if you've gotten it from class today, you're good. If you don't like hers for whatever reason, I happen to think it's pretty good, then ask anybody else that was in class, but I was told that this was very handy. It has a sort of a super big breakdown of the whole thing. I do not have the wherewithal to go through it again right now. If I could be honest, I kind of just want to get through these questions without falling apart. So, but that is a place where you can go to find what to do and what shifts what when. When with foreign exchange. Well, we covered all that earlier. So that was, we went through what would cover the foreign exchange earlier. We went, I think it was Ellie's question about what appreciates or depreciates it. The same things that appreciate and depreciate currency will be the same things that shift the demand supply of that market. So just take a look at that again. All right. So we got through B. No, we have to explain B. Sorry. So why does the economy self-adjust in that way if the government does nothing? So the answer you write is this. This is how you do it. Okay. If it's B1, I think it was B1. I remember. But let's say it's B1. You want to write it like this. In the long run, the SRAS will shift to the left, period. Then explain why. Due to the high cost of inputs and wages in an inflationary economy, businesses if you prefer, firms will have to reduce their supply and fire workers as a result, shifting SRAS left. That's it. That's your answer. That's it. That's the whole thing. If there's an inflationary gap, that's the answer. Textbook every time. Now, if there was a recessionary gap, you'd say the opposite. In the long run, the SRS will shift to the right. Due to low cost of inputs and wages in a recessionary economy, firms will be able to increase their supply, hiring workers as a result, shifting SRS to the right. Does SRS left cause stagflation? Yes. Stagflation is not defined as SRS left. Let's get that squared. So what the hell are we talking about, right? Let's go back to the videotape. So if I go back to this, always shift if it's a change in the long run. Yes, Athena. If they tell you the government does nothing, the answer is always SRS will shift. Yes, that is always the answer. Here's an economy here of ADAS. If I were to shift the SRAS to the left, regardless of cause, that would cause stagflation. Because stagflation is defined as higher price levels at the same time as increasing unemployment. It's rare, but when this happens, they are the worst recessions. Most recessions are caused by demand shocks, meaning demand goes left and there's less spending in the economy and whoopsie-doopsie. The ones that are caused by supply shocks are the most difficult to deal with and they last the longest. What if the government does nothing for the Phillips curve? It's the same logic, right? So what are the Phillips curve rules? The Phillips curve rules are... Where the hell did the Phillips curve go? Here. Phillips curve rules are if SRAS would shift to the right, SRPC would shift to the left. If SRPAS would shift to the left, SRPC would shift to the right. It's a mirror. So those are the rules. Those rules do not change. If they ask you a question like that, they'd be definitely trying to make it hard on you. You then simply just use that same logic. It's nothing more different than that. That's it. That's all you need to know. Can we go over closing gaps? Yeah, hopefully. Like I said, I'm trying to get through these questions because I am pretty spent right now. But let's just see how it goes. All right, let me get back to the actual question we're supposed to be doing. All right. No, Abby. SRPC moves anytime. What? What are you caps locking me for? You can't yell at me if I don't see the words. I got 3 monitors in front of me. You're lucky I can even see anything over there right now. Anyway, no. SRPC does not only move in the long run. It moves in the short run all the time. Any supply shock causes SRPC to shift. So, SRPC doesn't move up or down. Let's not do that. Okay, so, all right. Let's review that. Let's pause this question. There's enough confusion. I guess we should do that. All right. Let's go up here somewhere. I don't even know where to go. Let's go to the top. Why not? Okay. The Phillips curve. Okay. Real simple rules. If AD would shift, move along the SRPC in the opposite direction. If SRAS would shift the SRPC in the opposite direction. What causes SRAS to shift? Lots of stuff. Any supply shock, natural disaster, etc. Or even something as simple as being targeted by specific government regulation or taxes. The government creates, here's an example, right? Example. The government creates the special income tax to be taxed on corporations. ... That's an example of something that would affect SRS directly. Okay? So they don't move up or down at all. It's left or right. Right? That's very important you keep that terminology kind of straight in your head because that's what it is. And that's the rules under which it moves. Alright, let's finally get back to this question. So, we did that bit on B. Let's go to C. Assume instead the central bank is concerned about the buildup of inflationary pressures in Zitoland and is considering taking action to fight inflation. Assuming the banking system in Zitoland has ample reserves, identify one monetary policy action the central bank would likely use. Okay, so this in this case is ample reserves. So it means we got to go back to the cheat sheet. And you got to use the material found on the reserves market right here. Okay? So, they're saying in this situation... Oh, where the hell did it go? Oh, I did this to myself, didn't I? Oh God, my eyes. All right. So ample reserve situation. The economy they'd rather not leave the economy alone. They want to actually get in there, get involved, and fix it. So what would they do? Well, here's your reserves market because it's ample, and you can see we drew in this before. There are two basic options: raise it or lower it. In this particular case, right? In this particular case, what is their goal? What are they attempting to do? They want to fight inflation. If you want to fight inflation, you need to reduce the amount of spending in the economy. That means you go as hard as you can on the policy. So in this particular case, to fight inflation, they would raise the administered interest rates. Literally, it would go from this line here to the up arrows to somewhere over there. That's how they would do it. Raise administered interest rates. That's how you fight inflation. It fights inflation because it gives banks a reason not to lend money because the government's going to give them guaranteed profits and they just leave it there. So that's what a lot of banks do, in fact, intend to do, and they do that all the time now. Okay. How would the monetary policy action identify and see affect each of the following? All right, the price of previously issued bonds. If interest rates go up, policy rates an interest rate. If interest rates go up, price of previously issued bonds goes down. That's just a rule. Real output in Zito land, explain. So the real output, do we have any information that we do over there? It should it's going to decrease. Duh. It's going to decrease because this is a contractionary policy, right? They're trying to shrink the economy. So therefore, real output in Zito land would decrease. Why? The policy is intended to constrict the economy or contract the economy. New net financial capital flows to Zealand. Explain. All right, this is the amount of money people are willing to send to Zealand. What's going to happen to it in light of this thing? What would happen to it? Well, it's whatever opposite would happen to trade, right? So in this particular case, if we're saying that this action of sorry, I'm blanking. Okay, so they want to fight inflation, so they're raising interest rates. That means the price of previously issued bonds are going to go down. Simple. Real output in this country, in this case, the real output is going to go. I'm trying to think about what's going to happen to price level from that reserves market question, which is why I'm kind of stuck and stuttering for a second. So I'm trying to figure out what's going to happen to the price level. The price level has to change, and that's going to change what happens to the real output, right? Because real output is real output, or what happens to real GDP. You can kind of look at it that way too. So in this case, if we're raising interest rates, and that's going to make things more expensive to borrow, we should go ahead and assume, because they're fighting inflation, so we should go ahead and assume that that means that AD is going to shift to the left. So real output in Zito land is going to decline. And the explanation would be they're lowering prices, but to do that, they're going to have to lower real GDP. These are still policy options at the end of the day. They only have the choices they have. So this is still going to be lower on GDP. And then net financial capital flows to Z-land. Well, now here's the thing. If you're fighting inflation and you're lowering the prices, that's going to increase the net finance. That's going to increase the, let me rephrase that. That's going to increase, it's going to increase the flow because you're fighting inflation. So you're going to be raising interest rates, raising prices. See, all right, but what is it based on? It's based on, So the policy action raises interest rates. So it doesn't mention prices, so ignore prices. It's based on the policy rate change in C. The policy rate change in C is an increasing interest rate. That would mean people will want to invest in your country, so net financial capital flows to Zito land would increase. I was hesitant because I'm like, well, it's going to have an effect on prices because you're trying to lower prices, right? That's the ultimate goal of the policy. But they didn't ask you about what they achieved. They asked you about based on the policy you chose. And so if the policy we chose is increasing reserves market rate by increasing those reserves markets, by raising the interest rates there, then we have to go with the higher interest rate logic, and that means more people want to invest in Zito land, so net financial capital flows to Zito land would increase. And again, the answer would be because more people want to invest here because of the higher interest rates. Draw a correctable graph of the foreign exchange market. The Z Show the effect of the monetary policy action identified in Part C on the demand in exchange for the ZEET. Okay. So, like I said, and then what will happen to their exports? Explain. All right, so I'm actually going to cheat a little bit and use the cheat sheet. So here's the cheat sheet. All right. The label would be, this is for the ZEET. Again, they don't give us a trade partner, though, did they? Or did I miss that? They don't give us a trade partner. They really need to give us a trade partner here because I don't know what to match this currency to. Whatever. It's fine. We'll make it up. Let's pretend that they're trading with the U.S., okay? So this is the foreign exchange market for the ZEET. ZEET's your A currency, quantity of ZEETs, and then it would be U.S. dollars to ZEETs, okay? Show the effect of that policy action. So because we raise the reserves market over here and raise interest rates, what will that do here? This will increase demand because foreigners are going to want to say, okay, cool, your interest rates are very high. We're going to go invest in your company, in your country. That's it. It's that simple. So it will draw in foreign investment. All right, so it's going to be an increase along that. So if it increases foreign investment, that means demand's going to go up because I'm looking for what the answer they want to was. Demand's going to increase to the right, and that's going to raise the E. The E is the appreciation of the ZEET. So ultimately, the ZEET appreciated. That's what's basically happening here relative to the U.S. dollar. Okay. Okay, Zito lands exports. Well, if your currency is worth more, your exports are going to go down, your imports are going to go up. It's that simple. If your currency is worth more money, exports down, imports up. If your currency is worth more to other currencies, that means you have purchasing power sort of advantages, and that's how we solve that question. It's very simple. If, on the other hand, your currency is worth less in the other country, then you have purchasing power disadvantages. You got to buy their expensive ticket before you can pay, get on their expensive rides. So it's usually a no-go. It's a mistake. It's not going to happen. So again, value of Zito Land's exports is going to decline because the value of the currency is going up, and people want to pay higher prices to access goods in the market. That's the idea. All right, that's the whole question. All right, so where are we? 10:15. I'll be honest. I don't have it in me to do these tonight. I don't. I feel myself sounding stupid, so that's never a good thing. So, look, we have all day tomorrow. We have both classes before you guys have to go down to the test. So, yeah, that's basically it. So let's call it there tonight. I mean, we're talking, I was on here for, 2 hours? That's pretty decent. I can't really do no more. I'll be blunt. I'm very tired. I had a lot of stuff to do this afternoon. That wiped me the hell out. So we'll do it. We'll do these tomorrow. Any other questions you have? If I said something that sounded stupid in the last 20 minutes, call me out on it tomorrow because I don't even remember what I said. I feel like I'm rambling. So, let me know, and we'll go from there tomorrow. We'll do it. All right, guys? So hopefully 2 hours was something worthwhile. All right, and I appreciate your time. See you tomorrow. You'll do fine. I'm not worried about it. Later.